This podcast is an expression of the personal views and opinions of the hosts and guests, and they do not represent the official stance of the podcast, its sponsors, or affiliated organizations. The podcast may cover topics such as drugs, mental illness, politics, and religion, which can be controversial or sensitive. The podcast does not support any illegal activities and advises listeners to seek help from appropriate professionals for any personal concerns related to these topics. The information provided in the podcast is for general informational purposes only, and it is not a substitute for professional advice. Listeners are urged to consult with a qualified healthcare professional for any questions regarding their mental or physical health. The podcast and its creators are not responsible for any loss or harm resulting from the use or reliance on the information provided in the podcast.
Recording.
Turn my mic up.
Let's get it on.
What up, everyone? And welcome back to another episode of the Street Stoics podcast. Tonight, we have everyone joining us. We were able to link up today for this special episode here that we're about to provide you guys. What's going on, guys?
Just living the dream.
Living the dream.
There you go. It's been a while since I heard that one. All right, so we've been pretty much hinting at this particular episode for a couple of weeks now with some of the episodes in the past. And this is something that has pretty much been on my mind for some time now. And it's in regards to our modern times, pretty much technology in particular, with how it's affecting us as humans in regards to our daily lives, and particularly with our Stoicism podcast, how it actually affects us in continuing to stay on the Stoic path and what those effects are. So I wanted to start off first by giving a good definition of what technology is pretty much described as and defined as. So I'm going to kick it over to Mike so he can provide us that definition.
All right. So the definition of technology, according to ChatGPT, technology is a broad term that refers to the practical application of scientific knowledge to achieve specific goals. It encompasses a wide range of fields, including engineering, medicine, and education. Technology can be thought of as the tools and techniques that people use to solve problems and improve their lives.
So yeah, that's a pretty general description of what technology is. It encompasses a lot of just whatever can improve anything in daily lives, pretty much. Even agriculture is considered a form of technology, hospitals and everything of the such. But in particular, this episode is based on, our what I would call the poison of the black screen, the black mirror. So that probably falls more into what would be considered maybe modern technology. Do you have a definition for that?
I do. Again, ChatGPT provided modern technology is the application of scientific knowledge and innovations to create, develop, and improve tools, machines, systems, and processes to meet the needs and desires of society. It is the advancement of old technology with new additions and modifications. Modern technology is also about efficiency, speed, communication, and empowerment.
A lot of positives there, right? A lot of that's just a super positive definition for the term, which in all reality, technology in whole is a good thing for our modern society. It's made a lot of things very convenient, a lot of things more affordable. Uh, with technology, we're able to produce more food, be it that maybe some of the ways that our food is being grown and pretty much made so that the masses can consume it aren't always the best, but we do have that option. So there is, not a crisis of hunger per se in this country. And then there's a lot of other avenues in which, modern technology has been definitely helping out. And, Nate would definitely agree to that, especially with medical, the field of medicine and everything that comes with, that avenue. I'm sure that uh, if this would have been some other time, things would have been completely different, right? Back in the days, any particular illness would have been handled completely different. Um, our lives now are definitely, I would say, prolonged compared to a lot of other periods in our history, in which, if it wasn't for modern technology, then we probably would have been dead a long time ago. So I wanted to start off first by giving some pros, because I do understand that technology is a positive thing, and in all reality, technology is not the particular problem. Technology, and particularly in this conversation, devices aren't the issue. The issue is the person who is misusing it, abusing it, not balancing out their use of it. So, some of the pros, obviously, the enhancement of the human capabilities. I mean, we are now able to sit here and have this conversation thousands of miles away from each other, and able to record this podcast and be able to stream it for however many people are actually listening to this podcast, which is a pretty good amount now. We're able to get this message out there and be able to have conversations from afar. And thanks to, obviously, modern day technology, we're able to do this. So I do have that understanding that there are definitely a lot of pros, pluses to having all this technology available to us. One of the biggest things that obviously comes with technology is entertainment, the pleasures that come with it, right? To be able to now find certain times to just escape or just enjoy something, even a movie, a video game, music video, you name it. You have that ability to do that now. Back in the days, you probably just sat around figuring something out, which, even that in itself is not a bad thing. That's actually something that a lot of people are missing, that time of boredom. But just sticking to what the pros are, those are some of the ones that I was able to highlight. Now, I could have done a better job of looking up more information on pros. There are. I am not oblivious to that. But I think, just to stick to this episode, I'm going to be giving a lot of what the cons are. Because a lot of times people don't focus on what those are, and I want to just be able to highlight those and bring those up. And I'll just check in. Maybe, Nate, you have some other pros. Do you know of any other pros when it comes to technology that might be able to add to that list?
I mean, nothing really outside of what you've already covered. Listening to the descriptions and everything, I'm thinking not that it was maybe the first piece of technology, but there's a major story behind inventing the wheel, right? And it was the stone thing, and Fred Flintstone used it by slapping some trees together, and then he used his feet to roll around, right? Like that. That Flintstone documentary is pretty good. But now we don't have to use our Lamborghinis, or, as one of our coworkers, John, would say, our Subarus. We can have motors and engines, and so we got the powertrain, and we link it to the drivetrain, and those things kind of propel us forward. And so, technology can be still very basic. I mean, we still got screwdrivers and hammers and nails, and then all the way up to, like you said, we're streaming a video, like it's a signal of what we look like to articulate it somewhere else, no matter how far away it is. So, uh, yeah, it's kind of vast. It makes things a lot easier, especially nowadays. You got a question, you can ask Google. You just saw Jay ask Mike for something that Chat GPT gave him. So now we're messing around with artificial intelligence,
In an instant.
and yeah, in an instant, right? And uh, you know, it's just crazy. It's crazy how far we've come.
All of that from the wheel, the stone wheel, from Fred Flintstone.
Yeah, Fred Flintstone's the first guy to invent it.
Just to kind of go in on that little tidbit about information and how we're coming across a screen right now, and you guys are able to see us, hear us, and all that, right? I working in the IT field, working with technology. I'm becoming a little bit more uh, knowledged and versed in some of the information that goes into stuff like this, right? Which is particularly data and the way that data travels through fiber optic cables and copper cables and all these different particular components that it requires in order for these things to travel from point A to point B. And it's just fascinating to see how far we've come. I always like telling people the story of how I can still remember my first computer, which was a compact Presario. And I remember taking that thing apart and just seeing all the components on it of it and just wondering, like, wow, what made this? And now being able to see that how it's updated from there and all the different components that are now required to provide all of this data to come through. It's incredible. It's fascinating. That's, to me, it's one of the most fascinating things to kind of observe and be able to work in. Um so let's move into the cons, right? The cons of technology and how they are impacting us as humans in a possibly a very negative way. So I did some research, did some kind of some YouTube searching, some Chat GPT searching, some looked up some articles online from researches that have been done by a few schools and departments of science. And some of the highlights that I was able to pick up on things that have been observed regarding certain, type of people and the way that they misuse technology, particularly, let's say, the internet, I would say. Um, some of these that were highlighted were that there is a lack of communication skills in the real world, and that's something that I agree that there is a sort of change in the way that we all interact now in society, in the world. You I feel like we speak a whole lot less now to your neighbors and your people that live in your block or in your area because nobody is setting that time in order to do things like that. And maybe in particular areas this still exists, and I do understand that that is not something that's broad in every single neighborhood and every single environment, but it just seems that for a majority there is a change in the way that we communicate with each other. Even the form of communications that we have with each other seems to have changed in like maybe the last 15, 20 years. There's also some studies that I saw in regards to kids that spend a long period of time on, let's say, TV, video games, screens, on a tablet, or anything of that such, and where they are just left to be on those type of devices for a long time, their communication skills are actually hindered because there is less interactions with the with real people. So there's a loss of those body language and those you know the sensories of touch to understand what exactly the conversation is about. So because there's less of that, the communication between that particular, let's say, child or person with other individuals is now completely different because they're missing out on that particular aspect of real life conversations and real life one-on-ones. There's also lack of eye contact, which I definitely have seen that from I would say, and not to pick on younger generations, but there is a bit of that where it just seems like when you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and you're directly looking in the eyes, and you just kind of see that they get kind of I don't know, it's like they get scared of that eye contact because they're not used to that. So that's something that supposedly gets affected by that. And a lot of people, uh, at least a good amount of people that I know of or that I've heard, they use technology, devices, screens, apps, games, you name it, videos, watching movies, shows as an escape. Um, they're using it to numb emotions. Sometimes, that's it, pretty much it's become another vice. It's the same thing as a drug. We've grown accustomed to it. It doesn't feel like we're getting affected by it because it's not, we're not feeling drunk, we're not feeling high, we're not feeling anything like that. But we're still getting some of that numbing of the emotions that we might be having. Sometimes you just want to go ahead and forget about whatever your problems are, and you just turn the TV on, or you go to your phone and just get that distraction. That's kind of what's going on. You're just numbing those emotions so that you don't have to deal with them at that time. But obviously, like everything else, even with drugs, alcohol, the problem still persists. The problem is still there. You're just masking it. So it's always a mask of that particular emotion. And obviously, we've discussed that about being able to deal with those particular emotions or whatever it is that's going on. So just like a drug, I would say that it's the same thing. You're just numbing. It's a vice. You're If you're doing it too much, you're abusing it. I would say the same thing with any type of drug. Weed, beer, liquor, anything of that such. Gambling sometimes too. You abuse it, you're gonna have problems. So it's the same thing when it comes to these cons that come with technology. You have any input on that, Nate or Mike?
You know, um, I think it all comes down to, like we've said in other podcast episodes before, is like balance, right? And you were talking about like all these different vices, and abuse sometimes has like that negative connotation around it. People think, like, oh, I don't abuse it. And using technology, I watched this video that kind of impacted me, and I realized that it could be in reference to abusing anything. So I'm not going to state what the video was originally talking about, but basically, this guy wrapped tape around his hand, a sticky side out, right? And he says when you first use that tape, it's sticky and it sticks to stuff, and he picks something up or whatever. He's like, but then you keep using it, and you keep using it over and over, right, and not taking care of it, and then finally it's not so sticky anymore. And he goes to pick up whatever it was that he initially picked up, like a pen or pencil, whatever that was, and he couldn't because it wasn't sticky. And that's kind of like a good visual analogy on abusing things, right? Like, I don't think that we're trying to say it's not okay to use any one of those vices, although some may be bad for your health, more so than others, but just abuse in itself is what's bad. And I think that comes down to your mind, right? Uh, if you allow your mind to, think it's okay to abuse whatever thing, then it really isn't going to make a difference. You know, it's just like anything else, you know. Hey, Mike, what do you think about this technology stuff?
Jay was touching on technology and kids. So I did a quick search. According to Maryville EDU, um, there's been since the pandemic, there's been a huge increase in children's use of technology, which has helped in many ways, getting people who don't have access to schools. They are able to do their online work. It says a survey by Common Sense Media found that 49% of 8 to 18-year-olds in the U.S. attended classes fully or partially online since the start of the pandemic. Further on down in their research, the flip side of that is that children between the age of 13 to 14-year-olds, with all of the extra screen time, the moderate or vigorous physical activity has decreased. So they're seeing more health problems related to in children with obesity and stuff like that, just because of the lack of activity. So I think, we're talking about the pros and the cons, just like with anything, like Jay was talking about with moderation, with, and goes beyond any age group, children, adults, anything, finding that balance between where technology is helping and where technology actually creates a problem. Me personally, I have a kind of a love-hate relationship with technology. I'm pretty, as you guys have found out, technology is not my biggest expertise. But also, since I've started this stoicism journey, like technology has helped a lot with that as well. You find a quote, you can find all sorts of people that have done summaries and done research on specific quotes and stuff like that. So finding that balance is extremely important, in my opinion.
Definitely. Yeah, and I completely agree with you on that. As far as the way that you use technology, I I feel that that's what's important, right? The way that you use it. Because again, technology is not the problem. The problem is the way that you're using it, the way that you're abusing it. So um, I've become more conscious, obviously, of my use, how much time I use it for particular things. I know that I mean technology. I've always been consumed in it, right? From having latest things that were coming out 10, 15 years ago, and just checking it out, from video games to cameras to just any type of different little gadgets that there were. If I was able to afford it, I'd buy it just to check it out, and get immersed in whatever there is. I mean, I also have a VR headset, which I barely ever use, but just to see what you're able to actually do with those type of things is pretty amazing. Um, but like you were saying, right, the way that you use it, that's especially when it comes down to stoicism. I feel that I wouldn't be this far into all of this if it wasn't for technology, right? I wouldn't have come across the informations that I have come across. I probably wouldn't have improved the way that I have improved if it wasn't for me going out of my way and doing research, looking up videos, looking up books, downloading books, audio books, and start just listening to them and just helping them improve me with the information that I'm absorbing from that. Because at the end of the day, we're pretty much like a server rack, right? Data comes through from what we're seeing visually, and that's the way that information comes into our brains, right? Through visual, hearing, and all the other senses that we can apply. If it wasn't for that, then I wouldn't be in this position right now, sitting here having this conversation with you, right? So it's always about the way that you use it. If what you're looking for is to change, if you're looking to improve yourself, then you need to use that as the motivation to do the research, go out there, find the information, what you can apply in order to improve yourself. It's stuff that's out there. Also be able to recognize your own patterns, your own um, hindrance, I would say. What's causing you from not doing that? Because maybe you'll find out that, oh, you're spending way too much time on this one particular thing, which I always understand. People think, and there is a sense of comfort, there is a sense of pleasure, there is entertainment that people just want to be in. But like everything else, like raising a kid, where you have to tell them you have to go through this, this shitty moment. It sucks. You have to be bored. That's the other thing, right? We're we're so now afraid, or we avoid boredom at all costs. Like if we're in a room where there's nothing going on, it takes almost like 5-10 seconds for you to be like, okay, well, I've checked out the rest of this room with my eyes, and now let me just pull out my phone and distract myself because there's nothing else here for me to do. But in boredom, that's where a lot of ideas, creativity comes up, especially me, in an artistic avenue. That's when things come up. That's when ideas come up if I'm not distracted. Now, there are other times when I go on to certain, social media platforms, or just Google's things, and I'll come up with some other ideas. So there's always that option. Um, so we're gonna keep this episode kind of short, just because we feel that it's going to be more of a two-parter. Next episode, we're going to focus more on how technology and stoicism kind of entwine, and then how it affects us with trying to stay on our course with all the stoic things that we try to do in our daily lives. So I'll go ahead and kick it off over to Nate and Mike if they have anything else to say, and then we'll wrap up.
Something I was thinking about is next episode, I'd like to ask ChatGPT specifically what would improve the human's quality of life, and just see what it has as a response.
That's a good one.
Right. Because I bet you it's not going to mention much about technology. And then the second one is, and this one is a part of the entrepreneurship side of me. I think what I want to do is ask what's the most popular modern day technology items that it can respond with, and then we should hash those out individually in those individual topics and just see what's up.
Yeah, I think that would be a good direction to take the next episode for sure. One thing I wanted to add, touching again on what Jay was talking about with social media, and I know something that we talk about at work, Nate, is dopamine, something that naturally occurs in our body, and so with the with social media and with technology, it actually using it creates dopamine, much like I'm looking at study that Stanford University did on technology and dopamine. It actually kind of works like they talk in here about how it affects the brain just like heroin does. So it obviously, like, we're not promoting the use of heroin, but it affects it's addictive, and that comes from that naturally that natural chemical that,
Right.
that your brain produces. Um, and social media, it never runs out. There's always something on Facebook. TikTok, you can scroll through videos literally all day,
Yeah.
and it's creating your brain just wants more of it. And so again, using technology to
Right.
finding that balance is extremely important. Um, these hormones are something that we can't control what's released in our body, but we can control we how we use that hormone, right? So um, maybe that's something we can dive into in next episode too. Is maybe the tactics that we use to not let technology and these things, external things, control us.
For sure. Sounds like a plan to me. All right. Well, I think we'll just wrap up this part of the episode, and then we got a plan for the next episode. Maybe it's going to be 2 parts. Maybe it's going to be 3 with these ideas. We'll see how it goes. But make sure to tune in.
Yeah, it's definitely a heavy topic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so just make sure to tune in next time, and we'll see how far we take it. See y'all later.
Later.